And talking about excellence, Mr. Vice President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to invite up here a platinum sponsor who's been in the business of providing grade A office spaces within the city. Ladies and gentlemen, Eris Property, the CEO, Mr. Enoch Ensua Mensah.
Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, fellow CEOs, I decided to change the phase of our presentation this morning by recommending one very able female to handle this morning's presentation. When Dr. K.K. Sapon was talking, he did indicate the fact that we need to make an effort to appoint a lot more female into the boardroom. I have elected one of my able assistants, Nana Abasegua Debi, to handle this presentation for this morning. Nana.
Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, CEOs present, I'd like to thank Enoch for this opportunity given me. Basically, I'm here to talk about the bold new normal, return to workplace strategies for Ghanaian corporates. So one would ask, why are we talking about technology, and then we would introduce workplaces. So a study conducted by Deloitte says that about 30% of organizations would still stick to working remotely, but about 70%, particularly in developing countries, would go back to work. And that's the essence of this presentation. So as corporates, as business organizations, we need to start re-strategizing on how we would go back to work. Next slide. So basically, Eris Property is a property development firm. It's backed by an institutional real estate fund called Momentum African Real Estate Fund. It's about 205 million USD private equity fund that looks at grade A offices and other commercial properties such as warehouses, offices, and then retail. Momentum's strategy is a very unique one because it blends Eris's experience of over 25 years in property development with the Momentum Global Investment Management Fund. I'm not going to bore you with COVID-19, but one has to know that COVID-19 was very unique in terms of impact on organizations. When you look through the other recessions that we've had, you would realize that organizations might not have properly been prepared on their balance sheet. But during COVID-19, we had just come out of the global crunch and businesses were in their topmost position. Within the commercial real estate sector, one of the areas that was greatly affected was hospitality, entertainment, retail, industrial, corporate residential, and some office markets were more resilient than the others. So I'm going to speak to this presentation with this background, with this Deloitte diagram. And it says that for every crisis, there's basically 3 time frames where you respond by basically dealing with the present situation and managing business continuity, recover where companies learn and employ strategies to emerge stronger, and thrive where companies prepare for and shape the new normal. So I want this diagram to be at the back of your mind while we go through my slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so prior COVID, SU Tower, which was one of the developments by Momentum Africa Real Estate Fund and managed by Eris, had everything basically in place. So this was our main reception. Next slide, please. Basically, we had spacious terrace for corporate breakout sessions. And we had a coffee shop. So SU Tower is located just around the Ridge Runabout. Next slide. We had access control. So the importance of this slide is the essence of smart building management systems, where basically tenants did not have to touch anything. Basically come in, you swipe your card, and you go inside the building. Can I have the next slide, please? Next slide. We had spacious lobbies, properly designed offices. We had spacious car parking accommodating 430. My CEO always says we should boast about this because it's the only commercial building in Accra that basically has adequate parking. Next slide, please. We have an access control car parking, basically swipe again. So in responding, so I'm just going to use Eris Ghana as a case study on how we responded and how we basically, recovered and then thrived. So in responding to COVID-19, we had to, first of all, be compliant to government directive. The government directive was, in March, was for a lockdown, a complete lockdown, and so we had to immediately lock down all our properties. Now, when the president came and reopened the economy, we had to look at ways that we could re-strategize and move our business forward. And in responding to COVID-19, the first thing that we did as a landlord was we understood the liquidity challenges that businesses almost immediately had from COVID-19. And so we had to re-engage our tenants. As a very sensitive landlord, we had to look at payment structures that we could agree with tenants for them to be able to pay and not defect on payment. We put in all the COVID-19 protocols where basically you come into our building and then you don't have to touch anything, you wash your hands and move in. The essence of this presentation is to highlight digitalization, which in our real estate business would be the smart building management systems. So basically, smart building management system is incorporating technology and the traditional facility management or building management ways of doing things, where, for example, you have an access and security control boardroom, you have a digital way of operating all the chillers, which we know as air conditioners in the entire building. Next slide, please. So basically putting an automated COVID-19 protocol system. And again, emphasize the smart building management system where immediately the bullets there senses a human being, it would automatically open up for you to walk through. Next slide, please. And then what we also did in responding was to basically put motion sensor taps and dispensers in all our bathrooms, just to give people or employees the comfort not to touch anything when they visit the washrooms. What we also did was to make sure that we were socially distancing within our elevators, just to give, again, our tenants and employees working in the building comfort. There was regular disinfection of reception and lift lobbies where we were doing it within every hour for these guys to come and disinfect the place. Just again, to emphasize that the place was COVID-19 free, or tenants were able to comfortably come into the building and work. Next slide. There was very thorough attention to details, so basically making sure that all the elevator buttons is properly cleaned. Our recovery plan. So we know in the beginning of 2021, a lot of people had come to buy into the era of working from home. But again, by the nature of some businesses, some organizations, you would have to go back to work. And so the most important critical things in re-strategizing your return to work strategies was density reduction, sanitation and employee support measures. And on density reduction, that's where my company comes in, where we have very large floor plates where you can basically reconfigure your space and allow for social distancing. Okay, so this is SU Tower. We still have space to go. And so you can come to our booth just in the corridor when we are done with this presentation. The last point that I want to dwell on is government reset. So as a real estate fund, we want to employ government to basically look at REITs. We know that it's a pipeline work, but it's something that we really want to get it going, because this is the time where we resetting the economy, is the time where we would be able to attract real estate funds such as Marif. And again, Eris as a property development firm looks at strategies to helping public organizations to rent to own. So it's important that both public organizations, also feel free to approach us, where we as a fund would look at acquiring a building on your behalf and giving you very flexible payment structure to be able to own in a long term. Thank you very much.